he organised a radio interview just so that he could damage control my article, which was an interesting way for me to spend yesterday. But you know you've made it when the Prime Minister takes time out of his day to talk rubbish about your writing.
Yeah, and it was on 2GB, which is like the biggest station in the country, so he wasn't taking any chances. The funny thing, though, is was it the day before, whatever, he'd been asked about this treaty, and he'd been sort of gushing in saying that coming together under the auspices of the WHO is something we all need to do. So he doesn't seem quite clear on his own position on this thing.
No, well, look, my fabulous editor, Rowan Dean, belled the cat on Monday about the pandemic treaty that's coming out. And when Scott Morrison was asked to clarify his position, he was all for it, and he was really talking up how great it would be to have a one world health kind of thing going on. But unfortunately for Scott Morrison and for his counterpart in Labor, Anthony Albanese, this kind of WHO control over Australia's health is complete election poison. Nobody wants it. So what happened yesterday is the story went viral when all the major parties who are fighting for freedom decided to take this issue on and go all out against the Prime Minister. And instead of backing away, the Conservative Prime Minister deciding that this is a great opportunity to show that he cares about sovereignty and the people of Australia and changing what went wrong in COVID this time, he decided to deny that there was a problem with the WHO treaty, pretty much pretended it was totally fine, and then refused to say that he wasn't going to sign it. So I think Australia is stuck with this treaty regardless of who wins the election this Saturday.
There seem to be two kinds of people in developed Western nations at the moment. There seem to be some who think these last couple of years have been a disaster, and whatever happens, we want to draw a line under them and not leave the regime of the last 2 years staggering on like a zombie you can't quite put out of business. And then there seem to be others who actually seem to have enjoyed being told what to do in every aspect of their lives by so-called experts, and think that, no, we just need to fine-tune that system by, say, picking a big bunch of experts who aren't even in our own country, who are somewhere like, say, Geneva, where all the clever people get together, and we won't even be able to vote them out. We can't go anywhere. Dr. Tedros at the WHO, there is no polling station on the planet where you can go and vote him out. There are significant numbers of people who actually seem to enjoy the last 2 years and want more of it.
Well, less and less of those people in Australia these days, and particularly even those who didn't mind wearing the masks and getting the vaccine, those people aren't so keen on the World Economic Forum or the WHO or the United Nations. They don't like international bureaucracies, and what they particularly don't like is the pandemic emergency powers that we saw Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews grant himself. They were some of the biggest protests Australia has ever seen, and the idea that the WHO could grant itself those powers and declare a pandemic whenever they feel like it, and then basically decide what our health future will be of allegedly a sovereign nation and free citizens, has not gone down well in this country. And it was so unpopular that the Prime Minister knew he had to go out that day and do something about the story, because the minor parties were cleaning up the vote. And they are terrified that they will lose power at this election over things like the WHO. And I presume it's the same in the UK, where the people aren't on board with this. They have not voted for unelected bureaucracies. They don't want it. And they certainly want control back over their health.
Are you surprised, Alexandra, by the way, in the official campaign, I'm not talking about some of the other parties, the minor parties, but simply on the Lib Lab side, that there hasn't actually been COVID. They seem to have agreed that COVID isn't an issue between them, between ScoMo and Albo, the Labour guy. They seem to have agreed that COVID isn't a thing in this campaign.
Actually, it's really easy to understand. They did exactly the same thing with climate change. So because the issues are unpopular and they've lost previous elections on these issues, they decided to run a unity ticket. And what that does is it nullifies the issue. There's no difference between the parties. They figure, well, it won't affect us at the election. We can still do what we want. We can still give all the contracts to our mates and still bring in all these taxes. But if we have the same opinion, then the public still have to choose one of us to run the country. And so with COVID, Labor and Liberal premiers both did the same thing to all the people. And so there's no victory to be had. The Prime Minister oversaw it all, and the opposition leader agreed with him. So neither of them can win on this point. So they decided to just not talk about it and hope that it goes away. But unfortunately for them, and fortunately for the minor parties, that topic has not gone away at all.
Do you think that ScoMo's going to be fitted for a new job in a couple of days? He's going to be leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition? Some of the polls seem to think that.
That is a really tough call, because although people aren't fond of the WHO in Australia, they are fond of this climate change narrative that's being sold very well here through our education systems, and all those young teenagers who were indoctrinated into the climate cult, they're now voting age, and they're voting for not even the Greens, they're voting for these things we call the Teals, which are worse than the Greens. They're billionaire-backed Greens. And so they are voting extreme climate change, and those votes will go to Labor, and all the freedom votes will go to Liberal. So no one knows what's going to happen. We don't know who's going to be in charge of us after Saturday. We could be a small southern colony of China. We don't know yet.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that and talk to you about that in a few days, Alexandra. Thank you. It's always great.
There'll be no more of me after that.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.